Well, Rick, thank you so much for helping with my project. I thought maybe it'd be good to start off by having you say a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. I'm Rick, and I'm working. Well, I founded a company called Orbit's Edge, and we're working on putting high-powered compute in space because it doesn't really exist there, and it's something that we're going to need in a fully developed space ecosystem.
Well, that's a really interesting thing to talk about. One of the um, observations that I've seen is like only 1/700th billionth of the sun's energy actually falls on the Earth, based upon the fact that it's emitting energy in all directions, and Earth is such a small
And we're
speck
pretty
of that.
far away.
And we're pretty far away, but I mean, it's like just based upon the surface area of that sphere that intersects the Earth's orbit compared to the, kind of like the
Right.
plane through the Earth. Now, space-based solar power is a way that we could actually capture more of that energy and use it and continuously build on it. But the question is, how do you actually get that power down to Earth? And high-speed computing in orbit or in space may mean that you don't actually need to get it to Earth because now you can put your data centers and those workloads that you don't need high high bandwidth actually in orbit or in space someplace.
So yeah, there's two ways you can look at that. You can either get the energy down to Earth where you can do the work on Earth, or you can do the work in space and get the results of the work down to Earth. So the I think the average rate right now is about a third of all data center energy. So the electricity that a data center consumes, about a third of that goes to air conditioning, to keeping the actual compute cold.
Mm.
So a computer is basically almost a 100% efficient heater. It's a heater that has a side hobby of punching out numbers every once in a while. So any sort of compute you're going to have is going to generate heat roughly equal to the amount of electricity you put into it. So if you do your computing in space, you're eliminating two sources of that. You're eliminating the actual energy that's the electricity that's spent on the computer itself, and then all the work you have to do to cool the computer. Because in space, you don't have to worry as much about the cooling. You can dissipate the heat into the vacuum, which is not as easy as you might think, but it is doable. But you also eliminate the heat, the cooling requirements, as well as the energy consumption in the first place.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's an interesting way to do it.
the radiating of the heat into space, it seems like that is quite challenging. While on the shaded side, it's extremely cold. Once you heat it up, you don't have convection or any type of, I mean, you don't have anything to carry away the heat. I mean, how quickly can you get rid of it?
Exactly. No convection, no conduction. The only thing you have left is radiation. So you can basically just radiate the heat off of your object. So it is somewhat slower than say in an atmosphere. For instance, if you've ever been to Colorado and you've seen the sun go down and it went from a relatively comfortable day to a pretty darn cold day in a relatively short period of time, that's because you don't have as much air around you. Um, but okay, better example. Um, if you go into the water, that is a very good conductor. It's also very good at convecting. So it takes the heat out of your body very quickly. So falling into 30-degree water or 40-degree Fahrenheit water is you'll get very cold very fast. Whereas 40 degrees in the air isn't isn't more than a little bit uncomfortable. Well, the same thing goes when you get into a vacuum. You don't have anything to carry that heat away. So it is harder to get rid of heat in space than it is on Earth. But there's formulas that describe how to do it. So it's a matter of working out the amount you have to get rid of, the rate at which it will go away, and basically keeping within those parameters. You basically have to design for the circumstances, just like you do in any other place.
Yeah, it seems like with your computing unit, I mean, couldn't you just have like a huge aluminum plate that's in the shade side radiating that heat? I mean, is it as simple as that?
Well, it's not exactly as simple as that, but we are utilizing the shade for part of our cooling mechanism. So we did we did look at it and say, well, if the sun is shining on your cooling system, that's going to be about as hot as an oven on a clean cycle. If you're in the shade, you're going to be at like liquid oxygen temperatures. So why have to worry about getting things hot and then getting things cold and then getting them hot again and then getting them cold again, when you're better off just keeping it in the shade as much as possible? So yeah, that was a good observation.
So
It's definitely better to deal with one problem than two problems, or an oscillating problem.
now, one problem of computing in space has been radiation. You know, the need, you know, the flip bit problem. And, you know, so that's why you have a lot of redundancy, and the things that are radiation hardened, you know, aren't as compact. You know, they have bigger, uh, you know, everything in order to
Right.
kind of make them less
They're
susceptible.
yeah, they're trying to make the maximize gate sizes, and there's other considerations that they're taking into account. Yeah. So you're going to ask, so what do you do, and how do you do your radiation shielding?
Exactly.
Okay, fair enough. So we're doing a combination of all the above. Actually, we're doing a combination of some of the above. We're doing some brute force shielding where we actually have physical shielding. Another part that we're doing is we're employing a certain degree of redundancy so that we can have, they call it's voting basically. You do the same operation 3 times, and if two of them get one result and one gets a different result, then the oddball result was likely interfered with. If you get 3 different results, then you do it over because you have no idea who was right. So that's one of the things that we do. We also have what we call an Overwatch system that is has lots of telemetry. It has lots of instrumentation, so that it can draw a lot of information about the system operations in real time, and it can say uh, either we're entering into a part of space that is historically problematic, such as the South Atlantic anomaly, or it can detect that the weather's getting bad today, and it might slow down operations or altogether stop operations if things are enough of a threat. So it's acting as the priority is preserving the hardware. Another element that we're looking into is these traditional rad-hard compute modules. They expect them to last a very long time. They expect them to last 15 to 20 years. And they're using basically 15 to 20-year-old computers on day one. One of the more popular ones that actually is flying on the Mars Perseverance rover right now, it left in July, is called the RAD 750. It's a 200 megahertz single core processor. That thing debuted in the 90s, and here it is going in 2020. It's older than a lot of the engineers on the team. So when you look at it in terms of like car depreciation, a car that's already 20 years old isn't really going to be much older in another 3 years. It's it's already there. But a computer that's brand new this year is going to be significantly older in 3 to 5 years. So what we're actually looking at is about a 3 to 5 year usable lifespan for our compute modules. And at that point, we're planning on refreshing and replacing them as they reach that point. If they're still operational, still able to perform usable work, we can transition them to other purposes. But basically, we're targeting a 3 to 5 year lifespan.
Now,
So redundancy, shielding, a good bit of telemetry and applying information to solving our own problem, and iterative design. We're confident that that's going to get us to a point where we can use these things, not just for the 3-year lifespan in low Earth orbit, but also going out to cislunar space, the vicinity of the moon, where things are much, much harsher. We are looking forward to, honestly, we're looking forward to breaking stuff on the way up.
now, do y'all kind of see yourselves as being like the Amazon Web Services type of model, but just your data centers are in the cislunar space?
Not really. They're kind of a big data version of this thing. They're very cloud. They're very big. I think the smallest product they have is a semi truck. We are definitely moving in a smaller, more flexible pathway. And also, if you look at the landscape as of today, there really isn't a lot of compute capability in space. So we feel that there's the ability to support more than one company doing something having to do with data processing, even if it's not, even if it's definitely not doing the same thing.
But I guess your billing model, do you see it eventually being, number of compute units that are like leased by the hour with the amount of like storage and data transfer and kind of billing like that? Or do you, yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of it. So we're actually looking at a few different things. We're looking at satellite as a service, where basically you'd pay for operations and bandwidth. We've also had people ask us, customers ask us, if we would be able to sell them dedicated hardware for just them to use. And on the one hand, we've got this leasing option, which is a lower per operation cost for you, the end user, but it's ultimately more profitable for us. But that doesn't necessarily mean we don't want to also sell things to the people who want to own it outright and have to worry about everything from their end. So yeah, we can do both. We can do satellite as a service, and we can also sell you infrastructure.
And how did you get into this, actually?
I got into this by having a conversation with my other co-founder. And basically, I have had an interest in sort of black box modular compute for several years. I originally worked with Deep Space Industries, and I became convinced that any asteroid mining that's going to happen, DSI was an asteroid mining company. Any asteroid mining that was going to happen, or any mining that was going to happen, is going to have to be largely autonomous. And that led me to looking at the compute capabilities that exist for autonomous machines today. And I don't see, or I didn't see, where you could get to that degree of autonomy with the compute hardware as it existed in 2018, 17. And that led me to looking at how rad-hard compute is created, the process, and I saw that as processors get more complicated, the current method of making something rad-hard gets more and more difficult to do. It's basically a redesign, and it becomes untenable at modern compute levels. And either we're going to be stuck using 1995 processors in 2030 or 2050, or we're going to have to come up with a different way to do it. And what we looked at together with my co-founder was what if we make a box that does all that stuff for you, and then you put almost whatever you want. You can be highly hardware agnostic of what goes inside the box. And that was kind of the premise of Orbit's Edge. And we talked about it, and we looked for problems and difficulties, and there were obviously obstacles to overcome, but we didn't see anything fundamental. We didn't see anything that's a hard stop. So here we are.
One of the workloads that immediately comes to mind that might be perfect for a setup like this is Bitcoin mining. And considering DSI was bought by a Bitcoin mining firm, I was just wondering where your thoughts were around all that.
We have definitely looked at blockchain as a way for doing data validation and data integrity, as well as a way of helping provide security. I haven't actually considered the ramifications of Bitcoin mining, but if you want something that's a piece of territory that doesn't necessarily belong to any particular nation state, I don't know how much farther away from a nation state and territorial waters you can get than in space.
Absolutely. And you just keep going if you're not far enough.
Yes. And then you've got questions. There's already some talk about flags of convenience for spacecraft, because currently, if I launch from the U.S., my spacecraft is governed by U.S. laws. There's other countries like Isle of Man and Luxembourg, Singapore, as well as the larger countries that everybody thinks of naturally, that are starting to allow bandwidth allocation and other services. So basically your satellite can be flagged in one of those countries. Flagged, as it were. It's not exactly the same thing. It's not exactly like a ship, but it's going to become probably more in that direction. So yeah, somebody, if they wanted to buy a satellite that does high-powered compute, they could potentially be seek such a reflagging and use it for other things. That obviously brings about other questions, but I can't think of a single piece of technology we've come up with in the past entire history of humanity that hasn't had pros and cons.
Absolutely. Even the pen and paper. But
Yes.
when will y'all have y'all's first compute unit in orbit?
So our current plan is by the end of 21. That's basically what we're looking at right now.
It's pretty awesome. Well, I did want to ask you a few questions about the moon. So I was wondering, when did you hear that we were going to the moon in 2021, 2024, sending astronauts to the moon?
Well, I don't remember the actual date I heard about it, but I generally try and stay pretty plugged in. So I was hearing the whole thing. So I've been pretty aware of it since the beginning. The big question I always had was, well, how serious are we? Are we going to actually see, budget allocations? Are we going to actually see contracts get signed? And as of now, the latest news I've seen is Nokia looking at wanting to provide 4G connectivity on the moon. And there's dozens of contracts that have already been signed to provide various services in support of Artemis. And that's fantastic. Another big thing that's really made me happy is seeing other countries get involved. The Artemis Accords. We've just had 8 signatories to the Artemis Accords. The more signatories we get to that, especially if it's countries that are that haven't historically been able to field a space presence, but actually get to do so now, the more signatories we have to this, the more normalized it becomes, and the better chance we have of seeing some version of this become our framework for lunar operations. And I think that's a great thing, because the Artemis Accords, as I've read that, looks like it's very pro human growth in space, and that's basically what we need.
Yeah, I mean, NASA seems to suddenly started doing all the right things, like the Commercial Lunar Payload Services Program, kind of providing that, primary economic incentive that causes like these companies to figure out their own ways to get to the moon. And then, like, I'm sending this video on a micro SD card on Astrobotics, uh, you know, moon landing next year, whenever they're in 2021.
Nice. So we'll be on the moon.
Yeah, exactly.
Virtually.
And at some point in the future, somebody will be able to walk over to the Astrobotic lander, get the micro SD card, and put in an Orbit Edge computing device and see what's on it.
Yes, and at that point, it'll probably take a fair bit of putting stuff back together again, because that's a micro SD card on the lunar surface is going to be a bit of a Humpty Dumpty from a data standpoint.
Oh, absolutely. And I keep thinking those people in the future are either going to have like this magical technology where they're able to reconstruct stuff, or more likely like today where I have these DVDs, but I don't have a DVD player. That's probably the scenario they'll have, is like, I don't know what to do with this.
Well, I was watching a thing. They were talking about how one of the current types of encryption that is very popular and has been, this takes 100,000 years for you to brute force it, and they're saying something like, so the new types of compute can break that thing in like 6 hours or something. It's like ridiculous, and that's the way it's been for every type of encryption that I've seen in the past decades. And it's always, this will take 10,000 years for somebody to break. This will take 1,000,000 years. This will take until the heat death of the universe, and then like 5 years later, and now it takes 6 hours. So I imagine the same thing is going to be possible with data recovery. I've got this micro SD that I broke in half, and I haven't thrown it away, because I have this hope that at some point I'll be able to get the pictures off of it. I'm not sure how that's going to happen, but I haven't thrown it away. It's in an Altoids tin.
That is really interesting. Maybe about the same time this micro SD card gets
Yeah,
retrieved.
I
So,
hope a little bit sooner. But although, that's the thing. Uh, I don't expect Artemis to be a boots, flags, and gone. If it's going to be useful at all, it has to be going there, learning stuff, going back with the lessons learned from the previous, and ad infinitum until people will just stick around for more than weeks. We do need to have some sort of a lunar village that has an economic purpose, because if you look at all of the cities that have risen and fell in Earth's history, they don't last without an economic purpose. They have to be a trading point, they have to be a resource extraction point, they have to be an agricultural center. There has to be some reason why people want to pay you to be there. And if that reason goes away, so do you. And that city gets reclaimed by nature. And we need to develop justifiable reasons for a moon village to be sustainable, economically sustainable.
yeah, I mean, it seems like we could get all those in addition to entertainment. I mean, Las Vegas doesn't really fit any of those reasons. It's just a whole bunch of people.
That's true. But that is its own reason unto itself. That's Vegas is its own entity. But yeah, that's the entertainment value value of the moon is not to be overlooked. I mean, I'm curious what it'll be like to swim on the moon. Does that mean that I can jump out of the water like a dolphin? That'd be kind of cool. There and definitely, I'm interested in extraterrestrial sports. I am interested in. You think base jumpers or the grandkids of today's base jumpers will not want to do these sort of things on Mars and the moon and other places? Although opening a parachute on the moon is probably ill advised. Uh, just slightly better if you do it on Mars. But they're still going to seek ways to damn near kill themselves, and I think that'd be a blast.
Have you seen The Expanse?
Oh yeah, yeah. I've seen The Expanse. You can also turn yourself to jelly when you hit some alien mirror slash wall thing, but you
Or
can be the first one to do it.
yeah, or
So
you had these people
for the
kind of
glory,
looping around the planets, trying to do like gravity slingshot type things. Whenever you said they'll invent new ways to
the
kill
racers.
themselves, I was, yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, exactly. And was that scene was just wild, and it's basically everything stopped except for his body, and that was most unfortunate for that dude. But hey, he was first, and the extreme ragged edge of our technology is littered with the bodies of guys between 16 and 26. I mean, you look at the during the barnstorming days, the average lifespan of a pilot was about 3 years. You look at, oh God, how many people are never going to come down off of the K2 summit and the paths and the trails leading up and down from there. Um, North and South Pole, the jungles, every desert. Uh, when man first learned how to ride a horse, I am sure a lot of the people who got killed doing that were young dumb guys who wanted to impress everybody. I
But
mean,
one thing
that's
is,
it.
they were like unknown, kind of doing it in relative isolation. I mean, people knew that people were dying in these ways, but they didn't really know the individual details and the stories. Whereas in space, these people are going to have Twitter accounts, Facebook pages, Instagram, and they're going to have like be on video pretty much all the time. You will know the details and feel like you're there when these people die.
Yeah,
And what kind of
yeah.
impact is that going to have on the whole um, enterprise?
Uh, well, I remember doing these dumb balancing acts um, on various things around my school when I was in high school, just because there were some cute girls around, and I wanted to look cool. It never really worked out for me. I did not work out very well, but I also didn't kill myself, so that's okay. Um, so you'll do it whether there's a big audience, a big virtual audience, or just a few individuals that you'd specifically like to impress. Um, so it'll still happen. I I feel like our Western risk matrix is probably lower than it should be if we're going to be an adventurous folk. Um, and also, there's certain risks that we've normalized, and other risks that we have not. We all intellectually know about the risk of driving to the grocery store, and we know what our chances of dying in a car crash over a lifetime are, but we still go for afternoon drives just for the heck of it. When really it's one of the more risky things we do, and if we wanted to be risk averse, we would minimize our driving. Um, so and yeah, there's people who uh, they're driving on their car and they might be live streaming something, or they might be doing video chats with somebody, and I'm sure there's video somewhere of someone dying while driving their car. But that hasn't I haven't seen it. I haven't, and I'm not going to look for it, but I'm sure it exists. Um, and I've known of people who have died doing death-defying stunts. Yet again, I have not looked for that, and I don't intend to. There's tons of combat footage out there. You can see people from every side getting killed in various ways. I also don't look for that. Um, I don't know what difference will it make if you feel that you know this guy or a girl, because there women are starting to do this sort of stuff too. It's guys the guy's monopoly on stupid stuff is kind of slipping. We're seeing a little bit more equality in doing stupid stuff. I've read numerous cases of um, young women who have fallen off of things while taking selfies. So maybe that's going to be a more equal thing in the future. But I know I would hate to. I'm kind of weird in that I don't really care if a guy dies, because I am a guy and I know what that is. I figure, okay, you rolled the dice and you came up with snake eyes, and that's just the way it is. Some of us do that. I'm sorry. But it always seems a lot more tragic if a girl dies. Because, I don't know.
But a lot of it has to do with, I mean, here on Earth, you could be fairly stupid and still live for a long time. Um,
Yeah,
in
yeah,
space and on the moon, you need to be smart pretty much continuously. Otherwise, you're gonna die.
yes, yes. So they also say in the airplane community, there's old pilots and there's bold pilots, but there are no old bold pilots. So yeah, it's another unforgiving place. I mean, you can you can look away from what you're supposed to be looking at for just a few seconds, and the situation has completely freaking changed. You can not pay attention to your instruments or not pay attention to particularly your attitude, and things can get ugly very fast. You have got to stay on top of everything and be alert the entire time. Driving a car is taxing, and it's emotionally has a certain wear on you because you're having to pay attention. But flying an airplane is much more taxing than that, and the vast majority of the time you're not anywhere close to anything.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, I've been learning how to fly a Cessna 172, and we constantly talk about the
Nice.
the workload on the pilot, and
Yeah.
making sure you're prioritizing. It's like aviate, navigate, communicate. Don't get so
Yes.
hung up with talking to the tower that you forget where you're flying, and
Absolutely. I've been working on getting my private pilot's license for the past far too long, and I don't have anywhere near enough hours to do it. It was a um, combination of everything plus 2020, but I'm still working on it. It's just a matter of like when I'm going to get it done. But yeah, it it is it does require every bit of your attention. It's not something where you can just oh, I'm just going to fix me a sandwich and just hang out here for the next 10-15 minutes while we travel like uh an extra 100 miles or 80 miles at depending on the speed of your aircraft.
there was that story about these United pilots that were so busy checking their email they passed up the city and they had to like go back. Can you imagine?
It's awkward.
Awkward.
That is awkward. Yes. But I guess it happens. particularly so in general aviation, the pilot's workload is much heavier than it is in commercial aviation. They have so much more. Well, you can't even say that really. I was going to say they have more instrumentation and more data coming in and more stuff that's automated, but really the stuff you can put in a general aviation plane today is getting pretty dang good. There's like ADSB was the biggest thing that was not ubiquitous to general aviation, and that became a requirement as of January of last year, right?
Yeah, exactly. Now everybody knows where everybody is, which is a pretty cool thing when it comes to planes
It's a
flying
good thing.
in.
If we could just convince the birds to do that. I actually was
I
in a
know.
Cessna and we overtook a hawk. Um, so the hawk was just soaring. He was going, I'm gonna say like 100 feet below us, but we basically gained on him and passed him from behind. We climbed, gained a little altitude, so we would uh, not accidentally have a collision. But it was weird to see that from that perspective because I've only ever seen hawks coming towards me, beak first.
Mm.
But it's like he was moving backwards because he was just soaring, and we are near the airport, so we were going relatively slow. It was a Cessna, so we're also going relatively slow. But it's remarkable how fast it can go from I don't see anything out there to there is a bird big enough to wreck your day, approaching fast enough to wreck your day, and there it is. Now it's gone. So that's, I mean, we were on top of it, but I was also seeing how fast that can get away from you. I mean, he could end up in your lap in no time flat. In the time it takes you to look over and talk to somebody, he could be coming through your windshield.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I would say that would probably be the biggest difference is lack of radar on the general aviation.
Yeah, and radar sets are getting smaller. LiDAR is already pretty darn small. I don't know that it can actually do anything useful in that sense. Um, but yeah, like the thing that I'm expecting to see as a big change for general aviation is when battery power gets down to like 300 kilowatts per kilowatt hours per kilogram, or watt hours per kilogram rather. Um, I know Elon has said it's got to be about 400, but we've already got the Pipistrel, and that thing's good for about 45 minutes of flight time, and it's roughly it's under 100 kilowatt hours. Sorry, 100 watt hours per kilogram. So I feel like there's going to be usable electric airplanes at about the 300 mark. And just from looking at the way the masses work out, multi-engine is going to make a lot of sense, which means all the existing airplanes are, you can't just throw a battery pack and a motor on a on a on an RV7 and call it an electric RV. You're going to have a whole different set of design parameters that are going to be influencing you. So you're going to have a full blown new generation of small aircraft.
Yeah, it'd be definitely amazing. Yeah. So if it was safe and affordable,
It's going to be weird.
would you go into space?
Yes.
And like, would you go today? I mean, if you could
Yes, that
on,
one was easy.
would you like take a Falcon
Yeah.
today to the international? You would. Oh, have you
So
heard?
yeah, are we talking about something that is me stowing away like on a rail car, or are we talking about something that has a reasonable expectation of of survival?
I would
Um,
say reasonable expectation of survival. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I would do that. But then again, I've done stupid things for just the personal knowledge that I could do them more than once. So maybe I'm the sort of guy who is destined not to see 100.
That reminds me of a joke I heard. All mushrooms are edible, just some only one time.
Yes, I'd agree with that. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so have you heard of Space Hero? It's like this reality TV show that's in the works to go and try to find somebody globally to go to International Space Station for 10 days.
I predicted such a thing, but I did not know that somebody was actually moving on it. Um, so, without knowing anything about it, um, I, I grudgingly have to support it because one of the things we can either have this pristine scientific, the moral equivalent of the South Pole research stations, or we can have a a a normalized, commercialized space economy with millions of people participating. But we can't have both. If you want to keep your ivory tower purity, then we will not become a spacefaring civilization, because spacefaring civilization means that all the stupid stuff we do here, we will do there, or somebody will do it there. But all the good stuff that we do here, somebody will do there. So it's a matter of um, I support Tom Cruise going to film part of a movie in space. I support filming some season of The Expanse in space, season 8 maybe. I support all these things, including some that I consider stupid, or others that I would definitely not watch. Um, like one of the big things that people have talked about is, well, has anybody ever had sex in space? Um, if they haven't, they will, and you will be able to watch that at some point in the next 10 years max. Um, I don't intend to do that, but it's going to be a thing because there's a hell of a lot of money in that industry, and I hate it, but it's part of it.
Yeah, I mean, the sports thing is probably something we could all get behind.
Sports, I can't wait to see. Can't wait to see. Like, how would you like to play Quidditch, but with like air jets or something?
Oh,
I mean,
exactly.
so if you were in a ginormous, yeah, if you were in a ginormous airfield, tin can, and you held a fire extinguisher and you press the trigger on the fire extinguisher, you'd launch across that whole thing until the air resistance stopped you. So right there, you have a mechanism for propulsion that doesn't actually expend any propellant. It's just it's just a way that people could move themselves around. So you could actually use just compressed air with little jets on your hands and feet, and you could do sports, you could do beautiful aerobatic, like three-dimensional ballet type things. Um, there's play Quidditch. There's no limit to the number of things you can do in microgravity, and I am looking forward to that. And if if for the good things to exist, I also have to accept some number of stupid and bad things to exist, then I think it's still a net good.
Absolutely. And sometimes the bad things is what teach us and leads us to the good things, you know.
Yes.
I mean, just look at
Yes.
the guy that founded Rocket Labs. He made a rocket bike, and there's a picture of him like riding a rocket bike, you know. I mean,
I've seen Peter Beck on his rocket bike, and that is so cool.
but yeah. Well, Rick, I really appreciate the time. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about before we go?
I think we've hit as many subjects as is possible to hit and still have some sort of a common thread to them. Um, I just want to say that I fully support Artemis. Um, I feel that we needed a hard, ridiculous, fast artificial date in order to make this happen. The traditional way of um, political based space exploration has been, I say that we're going to do something sufficiently far enough away that I don't have to worry about it myself. And I am safe in the knowledge that my whoever succeeds me will cancel it and declare an equally ambitious goal, which he knows will never be accomplished because someone will cancel it after him. So I am happy to see a firmly declared and actually supported Artemis program that has the potential to bring us back to the moon to stay. And also, I want to say about Jim Bridenstine. A lot of people had serious misgivings about him when he first came on board because he wasn't a physicist, he wasn't an engineer, he was a politician. And from what I've seen, he is a political animal, uh, but he has been able to navigate this political environment that is Washington and is NASA without becoming partisan. And he has, if you were to look at any element of the US federal government, I suspect that NASA is the most highly regarded one, both nationally by members of both parties, and also internationally by our allies and enemies alike. And I don't even want to say enemies, but people that we don't necessarily agree with today alike. Um, he has he has done a very good job of navigating those waters. Like I said before, we've got 8 signatories to the Artemis Accords. That is not tremendously easy to do. Granted, those are people that we generally agree with on a lot of things, but I don't think he's just sitting still with 8 signatories. I suspect that there's conversations about 10 or 12 or whatever follows, whatever non-prime number that follows that. Um, so I am in tremendous admiration for him and his capabilities and what he's gotten us to so far. His embracing of new technologies as they've arisen, while still navigating that ultimately political landscape. Um, if this thing keeps up and we end up on the moon, he could very well end up in the top 3 greatest administrators that NASA's ever had. Um, so I got that. So a small statement, but
Yeah, I
but
know. I've
yeah,
been
that's
really
that's what I was thinking.
impressed by Bridenstine. I've met him one time. He's actually a graduate from Rice University here in Houston, and
Of course
the
he is.
local chapter of Students for Exploration, Development, and Space there was able to bring him in for some talks, uh,
That's awesome.
and you know, he comes across as genuine. I would say, you feel like a lot of politicians or political animals are all about how do I get the votes and how do
Hmm.
I stay in power, how do I increase my thing. And with him, he really feels like he has an objective um, that's much much higher than just simply trying to increase his personal statue, right? It's actually trying to get NASA to go places.
I feel almost from listening to him speak, I almost feel like his quiet loyalty that he wouldn't say out loud is to the human race, even above just his country. I'm not saying in conflict with, but that seems to me to be his greater goal. I feel that way about myself. I love my country. I'm a Marine. Um, but in the space arena, I have found the ability to look at a loyalty above my country. So that's not an easy mental shift, but I feel that it's what we're going to have to do in this century to come. So since you went to Rice, uh,
Well, I didn't go to
you remember
Rice.
Kennedy's. Oh,
He
oh,
went to
okay.
Rice. I
He
just
went to
visited.
Rice.
I just visited while he was there.
Okay.
I
Okay.
wish
I
I went to
definitely
Rice.
would. I would have visited too. So you know what Kennedy said in his speech.
Yeah,
Um, we do these things because they're hard. So there was a piece of brilliant speechcraft in there that's almost always cut out. You know what it was, right?
is it about these things will be used to measure the best of us, or something like that? Or you're talking about if we look at all of humanity as 100 years, then
No, it was immediately. Nope. It's the part that you'll ignore. Um, and it was done specifically for posterity, I believe. So he lists some hard things, and the last thing he says is, "Why does Rice play Texas?"
yes,
He said that in front of Rice. So there's massive applause, massive cheering, and then he says, "We do these things because they are not because they're easy, but because they are hard." And there's cheering, and you're like, "Oh wow!" When you hear it as a kid, you're like, "All these people are in perfect agreement." No, that's the leftover cheering from a football reference. I mean, that is what they're actually cheering. They're cheering about this engineering school going and playing University of freaking Texas every year, and it always, like, ever since I found out, ever since I heard the full speech in its entirety, and then I hear the clip that always gets played. I I I caught that and I was like, oh my God, whoever wrote that, whoever put that line just before the part that would become the soundbite of humanity, whoever did that was freaking brilliant. Because by hearing the applause, you're automatically in favor of whatever it was that was just said. And it just makes it sound so much more grand than it would have been if he had just said that with silence in the audience. It was it was brilliant political theater.
that is a wonderful observation. I know the part that you're talking about. I mean, he was just talking about. Some people ask George Mallory, why does he climb mountains? He's like, I climb mountains because they're there, and he's like, space is there, and we intend to climb it. And some may ask, why does Rice play Texas? And I think a couple of other things he put in there too. But
Yeah.
it never occurred to me, like the placement of that and the hangover cheering. I mean, if they intended it, brilliant. If they didn't intend it, it really was lucky.
Serendipitous.
Serendipitous, yeah.
So yeah, that's I guess that is my final thing to add. But I can't ever not make a comment about that Rice play Texas thing. because it just it's such a brilliant move, I think. And I choose to believe it was intentional. I choose to believe that was not um, serendipitous. But yeah. So yeah,
Well, I got a
I
terab.
enjoyed talking with you as well. Hope you enjoy.
Oh, I got a
Sure.
terabyte micro SD card, and I've been thinking about what else I could put on that, and I'm going to put that speech. That's definitely going. A copy of JFK's Rice speech.
That's worth it. It's definitely worth it. Man, that's actually really perfect. It's crazy. Um, do you know to what degree Kennedy was actually interested in space exploration?
Not much at all. In fact, I think he was afraid that.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, I yeah, I think. I mean, I've heard people say that the Bay of Pigs really pushed him to try to do something really diversionary, and Sputnik and everything
Yeah.
else, and that really pushed him into this. But maybe believers are kind of uh, at a disadvantage, in the sense that they just assume that people would see values, and they don't look at the realistic levers that have to be pulled and pushed in order to make things happen.
You're right. You're you're absolutely right. One of the so you know what's the type of space entrepreneur who's least likely to get his project funded and actually see it happen? The science project guy, the dreamer guy, the guy who's like, I know this technology will work. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be amazing, and everybody's going to love it. Build it, and they will come. That guy is the guy who's most likely to be dead on the side of the road. The person who likely to get funded, most likely to actually see this thing through to fruition, is the one who is a little bit colder, who can say, so these are the identified markets. These are, here's the spreadsheets. Here's the things that actually support the economics of the thing that we're working on. That's the one who's most likely to succeed, because frankly, all these science projects, we've known how to build a full-blown space economy since the 50s. We've known how to build orbital habitats. We've known how to build moon bases. We've known how to do space mining. Now, granted, we'd get a lot of details wrong, but with national will and a darn near infinite budget, we could get it done. We could have got it done by 19. Well, I won't say that. If we had worked steadily from the Apollo program on, we would definitely have cities on Mars by now, because all the technology, all the science, that was all there. I can show you coherent plans for moon cities dating back to the late 70s, and they would have worked, but you have to convince no bucks, no Starbucks. So you got to convince somebody who's got the cash that what you're wanting to do is not just a cool science project, it's actually an economically viable thing that can return the investment. And that's where we have to be.
Absolutely. Well, Rick, thank you so much again for your time. And
that is my last observation.
awesome. But hopefully we'll be in touch, and we can share future observations as well.
For sure. I enjoyed this, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of your other interviews.
Awesome. Well, have a good day, Rick.
Likewise. Thank you much.
Thank you.